Bill. There's so much going on. There's lots happening. Let's get to it. First, we're going to start in Guelph. And one of the things, two things that we have to know about Guelph. One, Guelph really wanted to solve the homeless problem. And one of the things that Guelph did to solve the homeless problem was increase shelter space, then open hotels, full hotels for people, basically assisted living, add free cab rides to the safe injection site. So you get free hotel accommodations, free rides to the drug site, free drugs, taxpayer funded, safe injection site, ride back to your hotel room, free dinner, right? So like, at what point, like that's expensive. At what point are you incentivized to go back to work? At what point are you incentivized to stop this gravy train, right? I really need to get my head together after today's visit to the injection site. What? Like, honestly, right? They're really going to tighten up then, right? Is that the plan? I'm not sure. But Guelph paid for all that. And I think still pays for all of that. And I think because this is not just a Guelph thing, these tents in St. George's Square. So just to give you some idea of where you are, down here is the E-Bar and the library and Simply Wonderful and Market Fresh. Right at the end of the street is Market Fresh and the library. And this way is what used to be the Eaton Center. I think it's the Guelph Center now. And like this is Macdonell here. So this is right square downtown Guelph. This is the BMO building, right? Like downtown Guelph, the BMO building. And so unfortunately there's a whole tent city. No, I watched bylaw. I almost waved them down to say, hey, did you guys notice that there's a tent city here? Like bylaw officers, are you going to write some tickets? I think that if I went and put up my tent there, I'd get a bylaw officer, writing me a citation or something like that, get something added to my property tax bill. Like, it just seems completely round the bend bonkers that Guelph goes to these extents to fight homelessness. And then we have these tent cities. So it seems like there's something else going on, something that is, well, I mean, it could be that there's more incentive to have new Canadians or other people in hotel rooms, drug addicts in hotel rooms, people who just can't afford their houses, or people who have had their interest rate increased to the point where they're removed, evicted from their house, or their landlords lost their house and they're evicted from that, so on and so forth. They end up here, right? And so it's incredible that the resources that are meant to help Canadians are going to foreigners. And I'm unapologetically opposed to that. I think that we should deport people who are here illegally and funnel resources into helping Canadians and stop the bleeding and help Canada get back on its feet, because we can produce a lot of valuable products. And instead of doing that, we're being lost in gender ideology, and it's criminal. Absolutely intolerable. Disclosed TV is reporting half of the members of on the WHO's Transgender Health Policy Committee are not qualified medical experts, and the majority are social justice activists. So I think that there's a bigger plan. Like, this isn't just Guelph that's having tent cities. It's everywhere that's having tent cities. Big and small places, all sorts of places are having tent cities. And that speaks to me that, I mean, you don't live in a tent city in Guelph in the wintertime if you can help it. And even if you can't help it, like, that's not possible. And even less in Alberta, right? There's ice fishing huts, right? That may make it kind of okay. But even so, not really. Like, that's not a real solution, and not a real long-term solution either. And so it seems like, and anybody who's wintered in Canada at all understands that. And so having people put up these tent cities in all cities across Canada, it seems like there's a bigger plan. And the WHO having these social justice activists seems also part of a bigger plan. Like, the WHO says that men can be women. It really doesn't matter what authority says that, right? Like, they're just invalidating their own credibility. They're just torching their own credibility. It has nothing to do with what a man is and what a woman is. It just means that the WHO can't be trusted. That's it, right? So it's just interesting to point that out and to see that there are a lot of these places that are willing to virtue signal and at the same time torch their credibility. And weird, right? Like, that's really interesting. Michael says he's a journalist, maybe an independent journalist. He says, yeah, roving journalist, friend to all dogs. So, journalist. And he says, as I was asking Nikki Haley a question about Ukraine and at her event in Iowa this afternoon, campaign operatives had a police officer come and escort me out of the venue, accusing me of trespassing and threatened me with arrest if I returned. That's the tactics they use in Canada. For real, for real. If you go to a political event, it used to be that people didn't know what to do with people who would ask questions that weren't on the approved list. They would all look panicked, and events, or the people who are supporting the politician would come and try and disrupt what you were doing. They'd try and get in front of you or whatever. And now they just have police escort you off, and that's what they're doing in the States too. And man, that's very interesting, right? Nikki Haley, protected candidate, can't make too many waves around her, right? Woo. Jason says the farmers protested Nuremberg, Germany today. I wonder where the mainstream media is on this. It seems like this might be considered news. Right. So on one side, you've got the WEF that's got its fingers in every pot. Its fingers in Nikki Haley in the United States. Its fingers in the Democrat Party. Its fingers in Canada on every party. Its fingers in everywhere you could possibly imagine. Everywhere, period. And so the counter to this is the German protest, and the Germans are protesting what's going on there, which is similar things to what's going on here. They have all different names, but it's kind of the same policies wrapped in a different name. So this is day 5, I think, of the Germans protesting. This is from January 12th. So this is yesterday. Maybe that's day 4 or 5. Ryan says, overhead shot of the farmers' protest in Nuremberg, Germany today. Epic. So there's a lot of people. They're lined up in columns. Holy smoke. It's looking very military. Those farmers. Tara says the German farmers don't sleep. They've continued to protest against their government for nearly a week. Who else supports their fight? I think it's everybody's supporting the German farmers, unless you're, I don't know. I was talking with somebody on Twitter this morning, and they were saying a lot of people really still support like this liberal kind of open border, wishy-washy communism crap. And I think that the counter to that is selling them a better vision, right? Because communism, you're supposed to inhabit the victim all the time, or at least in this version of communism, you're supposed to inhabit the victim all the time. You're always supposed to be the victim, right? If something bad happens to you, you're the victim. If something good happens to you, you're almost the victim these days as well. So it seems like a better vision is you have the power to be as great as you want to be. But to me, that seems trite and kind of old-fashioned. That seems to be like just generally good advice, because that's what life is all about, right? Like, you have the power to do anything you want with your life. It just takes a little bit of effort, patience, and repeating things that work and stopping doing things that don't towards your goal, right? Like, you could do anything, right? Basically, that's what I was taught when I was a kid, right? Like, the sky's the limit, kid. You can do anything you want to do because the world is so full of possibility, and you are so capable that you could choose anything and you'd be good at it. So do it. Just do it. All you have to do is choose, right? So it's like choosing, and the choosing is kind of fun, right? And then you get better and better and better. But nowadays, kids are told, if you ascribe to this thing, we're going to hold you up as a savior, and if you don't, you're going to be ignored as somebody who's alt-right loser or whatever. And it's upside down and backwards, right? So it seems old-fashioned to me, because it seems like just regular life advice that any sane person would give any person coming up, right? But maybe it's not. Maybe people should be that explicit, right? If nobody's ever said that to you, all you have to do is choose. You can do anything. Okay, Peter Sweden says it's happening. Absolutely huge convoy of tractors protesting in Germany. The farmers are protesting for the 5th day in a row. Share, the media isn't showing you this, so you can see the convoy of tractors coming in. And yeah, like, I think that there's a lot of power within this. We'll see if they're able to bear any fruit with this protest. I don't know that anything's happened yet, but I'm not that deep in German. Like, I don't speak German or anything like that, so I can't monitor the German feeds or anything. I'm just monitoring what the English guys are talking about. And it seems very interesting, but it doesn't seem like the government is cracking. And the other part I wanted to mention as well is the Dutch got Ruta out, right? But it still seems like that problem's not solved. I'm not hearing anything about it. I'm not hearing that there's Dutch farmers, although maybe the Dutch farmers are going to come to Germany in a sympathy protest type deal. But I feel like there's still question marks about that. I'm going to have to do some research about it, but I feel like that's not a slam dunk win, even after getting rid of Ruta. We'll have to come back to that. Scott Moe, talking about carbon and CO2, says, here's what temperatures are going to be like across Canada tonight. Remember on this cold winter's night how Trudeau provided a carbon tax break on home heating oil, mainly for Atlantic Canadians, but did nothing at all, or nothing for all the other Canadians who will be using other heat sources to keep their homes and families safe and warm tonight. So yeah, like it is a very, very cold temperature across the country, right? Minus 31, or across the province, minus 31, minus 43, minus 40, minus 38, minus 37, minus 36. Like, we're talking freezing cold. We have not had cold in Ontario yet. We had the first snowstorm last night. It was like 15 centimeters maybe. It was super fun, and it kind of half melted, and it's kind of snowing today again. But we're going to be getting these minus 20 temperatures coming next week, and we're going to have to pay carbon tax on all of that heating, because most of Ontario uses, a lot of southern Ontario, northern Ontario, uses natural gas to heat our homes, right? So, or electricity, those poor suckers who use electricity. Remember the 1980s when they said electricity is going to be abundant and cheap, everybody use radiator heating. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. Danielle Smith says, warning, the Alberta Electrical System Operator, AESO, has issued a grid alert for Alberta. Right now, wind is generating almost no power. When renewables are unreliable as they are now, natural gas plants must increase capacity to keep Albertans warm and safe. Please stay safe. Grid alert, power system under stress. So we are barely even started down any kind of path, and we have a premier who's very pro-Alberta energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even so, we've got lots of red level grid alerts that are happening regularly under her watch. What happens if you get an NDP Rachel Notley in there who doesn't understand what that means? How many people would be very negatively impacted? Remember when Texas had a prolonged power outage during a snowstorm and people were in their cars? Also, like the homes weren't insulated the way the homes are insulated here, just temperature and region and stuff, right? I think that their insulation is different. It's like the code is different, so their ratings need to be different. Anyway, Ian says, good morning. What happened to all the global boiling people? What happened to the hottest year on record people? I firmly believe, like, these people will lie to you when it benefits them. They don't care that it's a massive lie. They don't care that the weather is proving them wrong right now. They feel no shame. They don't feel anything at all. They will lie to your face while they inject you with poison, and they will sleep well. They will not feel guilty about it. That's the kind of evil we're up against. And people sometimes think, like, this proves that we're right. This proves that global warming is not an existential threat. It's just weather, and it doesn't really have anything to do with anything else. And we need to get efficient, cheap power that doesn't negatively impact our day-to-day. Like, we had smog days in Ontario in the 90s because of the coal plants that we had burning coal for energy. And we in Ontario phased that out in favor of, I think, natural gas. And I think that was generally beneficial because no more smog days. So that's good, right? I don't have a problem with that. Like, let's protect the environment in that way. Yes, for sure. I'm on board with that. No more smog days. That's an easy sell for me. Anyway, I think that's probably a pretty good idea. But let's not put up windmills for power. Like, these green transitions don't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever because it's not going to work. But the people who are selling it they don't care. They're ideologically driven to do what they're doing, and they don't care the reality of the thing. They'll wait until this cold snap is done, and they'll go right back to lying to your face. Kate's work says, this could use a signal boost. Trudeau's multi-trillion-dollar virtue signaling exercise is putting lives at risk. Pipe Online Canada says, right now 38 wind farms are producing zero power in Alberta. 7 are producing minimal power. So these things don't work, even when the wind is blowing in a windstorm or in a snowstorm or whatever. Pretty wild. And here's EVs trying to charge in cold weather, and it doesn't work. These EVs are not going to work. They're not fit for purpose. They're not going to work in Canada. It's not going to work. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Here we go.
A lot of demand for power, and here in downtown Calgary, some evidence of that at the Tesla lot, where many people, of course, are trying to get that charge and telling us that their Teslas are only getting about half the mileage as they usually do under these extreme cold conditions.
Half way to the office take like all 140 kilometers of the duration, so I have to charge in the middle of the day in order to get back home.
And that's just one example of the kind of demand that we are seeing on the grid right now, with Albertans trying to keep their increasingly powered lives charged. Alberta's electric system operator says the province set a record for usage yesterday, and that supply is increasingly becoming a challenge. The good news is that the sun is shining, which will help with solar, but a capacity for wind generation in the province, which is about 4,500 megawatts, Friday morning was sitting at only about 30 to 40 megawatts. So that coal just at a standstill across much of Alberta. And add to that 2 large natural gas generators in the province are currently offline. Alberta's energy options are on increasingly short supply.
So that's not great. And I guess it's not very windy. This woman said it's very still in Alberta. So maybe it's not a windy cold, and maybe it's just a very still cold. So I'm not sure. I'm not out there. So apologies if I'm incorrect about what's going on in Alberta. Dan McTeague is responding to Brett Wilson. Brett Wilson says, why are we taxpayers funding electric car charging stations in limited locations? If the economics of EVs don't support the installation, then why are we paying for some charging stations? And he says, don't do that. And Dan McTeague says, never mind that, Brett. Suncor is getting some decent grift from the federal and provincial governments to install chargers at their stations. These things cost $200,000 per. It's why they're silent on EV mandates and the second carbon tax, clean fuel standard, and even emissions caps. So these guys are being paid off to transition to the new economy, and they don't care that if you want to charge up your car, doesn't work in the cold. I mean, if you're sitting there in the cold in your Tesla and you're reading your phone with the heat on and you've got your charger thing plugged in, like, how much are you charging? Are you going to really, is this an efficient use of the charging? And it's freezing, like it's really cold outside. So put your phone outside and try and charge that. Like, get it a little extension cord, right? Put the whole extension cord outside, put the whole charging mechanism outside with the phone, right? See how that works. Kill your phone entirely and then try and charge it outside. See how that works, right? Leave the phone outside for 8 hours and then try and charge it. Then see how that works. It's not going to work very well. So the Teslas, they're not going to work for Canada. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Well, they're going to try desperately to make it happen. And if it does happen, it will be a disaster. It will be an absolute epic fail, complete disaster. And people are going to be harmed because of it, I think. Trapped in like freezing or unintended consequences, people will be harmed. Lion Advocacy says, moving on a little bit, we've got our grab bag of governance here. And he says, first, COVID was an emergency. Then Ottawa protests were an emergency. Then for the city of Hamilton, drugs, housing, and mental health were emergencies. Now for Edmonton, housing is an emergency. Do you notice a pattern? Leading by emergency, but there really needs to be a better way. We have a better way. We just need to stop allowing this madness to lead us around by the nose. Like, honestly, there's laws, there's all sorts of things to go. You can't just go pitch a tent somewhere and then have politicians go, oh no, there's an emergency. And that's supposed to solve the problem. Housing is a human right. Okay, great. Are they going to live at your house? Like, moron. So it just doesn't make any sense to me, these people who virtue signal with no idea of what they're talking about most of the time. And they lead us to making bad decisions, lead us collectively to making bad decisions. CTV News, well, I think that they're also, Andrea Horvath was an NDP leader for a long time. I think that she's one of these people who's a true believer. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that she's on the payroll or anything to that effect for the WEF. I don't know that they want anything to do with her, but she's a true believer. She'll push their ideology without even getting any benefit from doing it. She's not even invited, like she just says, oh, this is a good idea. It's insane. It's insane. So anyways, moving on a little bit. Wayne Eyre, Canada's Chief of Defence Staff General Wayne Eyre plans to retire this summer. Dean says the tampon that broke the camel's back. General Wayne Eyre stepping down from position as Canada's top military commander. So it could be, or it could not be, because I really don't see them changing anything. Like if a new commander comes in, I am betting the new commander is a trans woman of color. So do you think that they're going to remove the tampons from the male bathrooms? No. Male and female bathrooms don't even exist in Canada anymore. Welcome to a whole new ideology. Ugh. It's just frustrating, maddening. Rebel News has David Menzies questioning Pierre Poilievre about free speech in Canada and what he's going to change from the policies of the Liberal government. He's just spent 41 seconds kind of outlining the censorship and things like that, arresting and things to that degree that have happened in Canada that Mr. Poilievre could address. And Poilievre engages. Here's the answer.
which of these carrots and sticks would you keep as Prime Minister, and which would you repeal?
Thank you. We are going to repeal C11, the censorship law, which allows CRTC bureaucrats to secretly manipulate social media algorithms to promote certain information, demote other information, and censor certain things altogether. This is a form of censorship that exists nowhere in the democratic world. Margaret Atwood actually said that this was creeping totalitarianism. This is Margaret Atwood. This is not a conservative, obviously not a conservative, but she is an artist, a true artist, who believes that freedom of expression and freedom of the press is necessary. We're going to stop arresting journalists. It's outrageous for the Prime Minister to have, and his government, to have journalists arrested for merely for asking questions of ministers and public officials. And we're going to make sure that the government does not use tax dollars to leverage news coverage in its favor. Right now, Justin Trudeau is censoring those that he disagrees with and trying to buy off the rest. And that undermines confidence among Canadians in the news media.
He didn't say he's going to repeal Bill C-18. And there was one other thing I wanted to talk to you about with this whole thing. So what I was going to talk to you about is actually part of the next tab as well. How do you counter a populist who goes after the laws of the country to make Google or Twitter or whoever, the internet, censor or shape the speech on the platform? You go after Google. You make Google change their policy and have Google do the policing. So now you don't even need the government. You've got the control of Google directly, right? You don't need the government to make laws to, play whack-a-mole with their dissidents. You just control Google directly and shut off the dissidents. How are they going to do that? The sensitive events law. So this is Benjamin Oliver. I can't remember his name. Jeepers Creepers. He's the ape guy, right? I think he's the ape guy. And he got an email. He says, a man who is high up in Google shares internal email saying February 24, Google will update inappropriate content policy for unforeseen sensitive events, including civil emergencies, natural disasters, public health emergencies, terrorism, and related activities, conflict or mass acts of violence. This is what's going to go on in Google. I have friends in tech, very high up in tech, and they're monitoring the situation. He said, whoa, the Ides of March are on, prepping now. Dear advertiser, February 24, Google will update the inappropriate content policy to clarify the definition of sensitive events. A sensitive event is an unforeseen event or development that creates a significant risk. So we've read this before. So I'll just play. This is his kind of wrap up of what's going on. I think it's Owen Benjamin. That's it. Wrap up of what's going on with the Google sensitive events. He thinks that they're going to come up with. They're going to run this event on purpose and make sure that they can censor Google and shape the narrative on Google with their sensitive event policy. Okay, here he's saying hints are in the policy themselves. Hints
as to what the event is are in the text. They mention inflation, price gouging, mass violence, victim blaming, and a bunch of stuff. Just read the text of it. So they will be able to turn off and shut down anyone using Google Ads, publishers, content creators, advertisers that don't toe the line in the next unforeseen event. They call it a sensitive event. This would include all advertising on Google Search, AdSense, YouTube. They say that they are about to make these changes to the TOS, but when you go to the website to see the new TOS, they aren't updated yet. They're getting prepped. I'm sure they have lawyers working on this, internal training going on, putting special moderators in place. Okay, so what I predict, which I'm never totally right on, but I usually rhyme, like I'm usually within the ballpark, is some form of banking collapse that will be controlled. Like, don't be afraid of any of this shit, guys, at all. So no access to money in a bank for maybe a week. They don't want to go too long because they don't want to actually lose the system. They want you guys to stay alive and functional. They just want you really afraid. And then the solution will be central bank digital currency sent directly to your phone and universal basic income. But you'll still, And to bring that about, they may have to do an event, because every major move needs a story behind it, whether it was 9/11 or COVID-19 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's too far off there either. So we'll see. Banking collapse. I hope there's no banking collapse. Fingers crossed. Get your gold and Bitcoin and silver. Let's talk about your health. That's what X22 always says at the beginning of the show. He says, let's talk about your health, and then he hawks Bitcoin, silver, and gold. So I'm just joking. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful